Today we are talking about a new feature in Crucible that was announced on the wiki yesterday, which are events in the game that drastically affect how the game will play in each individual round. Before you jump into that, a quick note: if you aren't aware of what Crucible is yet, feel free to check out the link above where I have a bit of a summary. And also, if you're new to the channel and this is my first video that you're checking out, feel free to hit the sub button and maybe the bell if you want to get notified of future Crucible videos. And now let's jump into events. So during each game you can have a set of different events that can take place during the game. There are starting events, which seem to always be there. There are no restrictions on those. There are critical events, of which you can have 0 to 2 per match. And there are major events, of which you can have up to 6, including the critical events. So you can't have more than 6 events in total, it seems. And you can have only 6 major events, or maybe some major events and some critical events. And while this is probably not a super unique concept, I'm sure something like this has been used in other games, I really like the implementation here because I think it's a very smart move to keep a game interesting that revolves around, well, usually the same game mode or one of the 3 same game modes on the same map from what we know so far. So it would be very cool to get some other ways to spice it up, and this is one of those. The starting events are specific to the Alpha Hunters matches and are only active in the beginning of that mode, so they are not in the Heart of the Hives mode or the Harvester Command mode, and there are only 3 of them as well. Critical events are very rare, but they can provide massive advantages to your team or to your character. There is no mention here of which mode they're in. Major events are events that occur frequently while on Planet Crucible, and they can give you various boosts which are typically not as extreme as the ones from the critical events. So the starting events are the following. Spitter Colony. A dense cluster of spitters is inside the containment barrier, providing a valuable prize for daring hunters. Just proceed with caution. So this sounds like it's just a bunch of enemies that can either be used to farm XP or can also maybe be a problem for you if they start attacking you while you're doing something else. Likewise, there's the Stomper Herd, which is the same thing as this, but only with Stompers instead, another type of enemy. And then there's the Supply Cache. This drops a cluster of medkits on the ground, which you can pick up and use, I guess. And that brings us to the critical events, the really big ones. The first one here is Damage Energizer. The unity is remotely energizing all hunters' weapons, increasing their lethality. For the next 120 seconds, every hunter is granted a 50% damage boost. That sounds absolutely massive. It specifically mentions the hunter's weapons here, so I'm not sure if it's just for the normal shots or for your abilities as well, but either way, 50% is going to be huge. And I'm also not sure if this means that everyone just gets it at the same time, but it sounds like it. It sounds like it's just a map-wide damage increase. The next one is Essence Canisters. A shuttle carrying a shipment of essence has crashed, scattering locked essence containers across the surface of Crucible. The unity has dropped a couple of unlocking stations to the surface that will unlock these containers. So I guess these give you a way to unlock a significant portion of extra XP, which is what essence essentially is, allowing you to level up quicker. In the same vein, the next critical event is Essence Eruption. A large upwelling of essence is violently boiling up from the ground that deals damage to players through essence puddles all around the map. This event lasts for 120 seconds, and each pool grants 200 essence in Alpha Hunters and 500 essence in Heart of the Hives. So this is a very interesting mechanic because on one hand it gives you extra essence, extra XP, but on the other hand you take damage for getting it, from what it sounds like. So it's kind of a risky trade-off, especially in modes where you only have one life, such as Alpha Hunters. The essence difference here also is probably explained by the different team sizes in both modes. Keep in mind that there is no mention of the Harvester command here, so maybe this event doesn't exist there. And that is something we'll see with other events as well. The next one is Essence Siphon. The unity is beaming down a device that can leach essence directly from the environment at an impressive rate. Whoever is holding the extractor will be collecting a lot of essence continually, but is revealed to all enemy hunters. In Alpha Hunters, essence is granted at 400 per second, in Heart of the Hives the rate is 75 per second. I guess it's a lot more risky in Alpha Hunters because you essentially only have one life and everyone can see you, which is not a good situation to be in most of the time. But even a rate of 75 sounds like a lot, considering in the previous event we saw that for an Essence Eruption you get 500 Essence, which is something you would get in just a few seconds with a rate of 75. By holding this for a minute, you would get 4,500 essence, and I guess you can't really get that much essence from essence eruptions at the same time, even if you run wildly across the map, and that's already an event that gives you more essence, so I'm assuming normal you get even less. The next event is Evolution. For the rest of the match, all creatures are stronger and grant more essence. This is very self-explanatory, just the mobs across the map being a bit stronger and more rewarding. Then there is Global Scanner. For a limited time, 60 seconds, all hunters gain awareness of all other hunters on the map. I guess this is again something that's for everyone on the map, and I don't even know if it has to be like collected or it just happens. And that is definitely something very interesting because it can drastically change the dynamic of a game when you normally have to find out where your enemies are. And depending on the game mode, this can be quite impactful as well. The last one is Mini Harvesters. The Unity is prototyping miniaturized harvester technology and is dropping 10 of these smaller, more limited and rewarding harvesters into the safe zone. Each mini harvester grants 75 essence per 10 seconds. So 1/10 of what we get with the essence siphon, significantly less, but possibly still worth it. I mean, it's extra XP and you also don't run the risk of being seen by enemies because of it. So it's just a nice little bonus. I don't know how many players can pick these up at the same time, if it's just something that everyone will just try to collect one of, or if they're all in the same place, but that's something we'll have to find out. And that brings us to the major events. Here, the first one is Bionic Converter. Permanent object. Interacting with this drains max health and grants a high amount of essence. Stops when the hunter reaches 100 health or breaks interact. So what I'm a bit confused about here is that it says drains a max health. If this means that it actually reduces your maximum health or just drains health from you. If it reduces your maximum health, it's a massive risk. I doubt it's that though. I think it's just gonna be reducing your current health and then you can heal back up afterwards. In which case it would be very useful for characters that have some way of healing quicker or regenerating health packs or something, which we have a few of. So this could be very useful depending on who you're playing. On other characters it could be very punishing, and camping near that thing could also be very interesting to get easy picks on the enemy. The next one is Cloak Plant Bloom. A few more Cloak Plants appear on the surface of Crucible. We've actually seen those, I think this is these plants that make you invisible. It would make sense with a Cloak Plant. So if it's that, then it just allows more stealth plays across the map, which would be interesting. Then we have Damage Boost Pods. Drops a bunch of small pods that increase individual damage by a tiny degree. This doesn't specify if it's permanent, if you lose this, if you die or something, so it's really hard to say how strong this will be. With the next one it's a bit easier, that is Damage Amplifiers. Objectives dropped around the map that confer increased damage to a hunter and their team once captured. The damage increase per objective is 12% in Alpha Hunters, 8% in Heart of the Hives. Now, what exactly this means in terms of claiming this objective is not quite clear. It could technically be that somebody else can claim the amplifier afterwards, so you can kind of switch around between them. But either way, it's a pretty drastic damage increase. 8% permanent extra damage that the enemy doesn't get at the same time definitely sounds strong. And then we have Harvester Master Control. An objective that grants ownership of all harvesters to whoever captures it. This sounds like a very strong effect, considering that in some modes the focus is really on capturing these harvesters. I don't know if this is going to be available in every mode, but if it is, then it's definitely something you want to look at in Harvester Command. And this can kind of create another objective to fight over while also fighting over the harvesters, because if one person is actually able to claim that, then their team suddenly gets a massive boost. Next one is Health Boost Pods. Drops a bunch of small pods that heal and increase a max health by a tiny degree. Question is if they're all in the same area or different places, or how this bunch of small pods works, if one person can pick up multiple. So again, relatively hard to say like this. And then there's Health Amplifiers, which kind of works like Damage Amplifiers, only that in this case the increase is health. The health increase per objective is 15% in Alpha Hunters and 12% in Heart of the Hives, and it's based on each hunter's max health at level 1. So if you leveled up and you have more health, that's not relevant for this effect. This scales with your base health only, and I think that's good for balance reasons. There is Interaction Shields, grants hunters a capture shield that activates an overshield equal to 30% of base health when an interaction begins. The shield is removed when the interaction ends. This is very interesting because interactions are something that I think you'll have for pretty much anything you pick up on the map or anything you capture on the map. And if you are in a mode where capturing things is the primary goal, then obviously having an extra shield is very beneficial, so you can't die as easily while trying to claim something. Next up is Kid Amplifier. Increases a hunter's medkit carrying capacity and fills their medkit inventory immediately. This one is interesting in multiple ways. I know that not every character has the same amount of medkit carrying capacity under all circumstances. There are certain things, certain upgrades that you can get to increase your capacity. So for some characters this will be more or less useful. And then obviously filling the inventory immediately is also very nice. You just get your medkits, and if you're in a bad situation otherwise, then you can heal up. Medical Station. Permanent objective that continuously heals hunters while they interact with it. Stops when at full health or the interact is broken. This may drastically shift the dynamic in a game as well. If this is really permanent for the entire game, then you could kind of return there between fights or try to go there on the way to fights and always make sure that you have full health that way, when otherwise maybe it's a lot harder to heal up if you have a non-healing character. So this could be very impactful depending on how much healing is available in general. And then there are Regeneration Amplifiers. Objectives dropped around the map that confer continuous regeneration bonus of 5 health per second to a hunter and their team once captured. Again, very, very interesting. It's something that will give you sustain throughout the entire match, it seems, unless another team can recapture this afterwards, which obviously is super nice for characters that don't have inherent sustain. And when you can disengage from a fight a bit and just regenerate a little bit, that is obviously massive as well. Even though 5 health per second isn't super crazy considering that some hunters have 2000 plus health pools. Then we have the Scanning Station. Permanent objective that displays all hunters' locations to whoever is standing on it. This is very fascinating. Also wonder if this is completely permanent, so you can walk back there to use it. But it seems to work very differently from the other objectives in that you just have to stand on it. And then we have the Spitter Colony. We already talked about that above. It's the same thing here once again. And the Stomping Herd is here as well again. But there's also the Stomper Gathering. For the rest of the match, all Stompers not engaged in combat will roam towards a single point on the map. This is very interesting to me, especially since I'm wondering how it's interacting with the Stomping Herd. So if there's Stomping Herds on the map, will they also follow the Stomper Gathering, or are they their own thing? And the fact that they're walking towards this, depending on where on the map they are, and they might be far away, this could be very useful or not useful depending on how long you wait, I guess. If you go to that point after a while, then maybe a lot of Stompers would gather there and then you could farm a lot of XP there. Who knows? But it sounds like an interesting, different mechanic. And then we have a really big one, which is the Upgrade Station. Objective that adds the player's unselected tier 5 upgrade as though it has been selected pre-match. That is super crazy to me because the level 5 abilities for some characters, the upgrades, are very, very strong. So having 2 of those would completely change how your character feels in some situations, I think, depending on which characters again. But I don't know if this is something that we'll commonly see or is super rare. And then we have the Victory Beacons, an objective for Harvester Command mode that grants a fixed number of points to the capturing team. Note that this is the only one that mentions the Harvester Command mode, so I'm really not sure which other ones are active in that mode. But I do think this could be interesting as well. Depending on how many points it gives, it might be worth more or less than just trying to capture the capture points in general. And again, that's something that could shift the dynamics quite a lot. As you can tell from this list, this is a massive amount of possible different interactions that can affect your game in one way or another, and I think that's really cool. I like that. I like that there's a lot of variety that should make game modes feel different whenever you play them. And obviously there's also the potential to add more of those at a later point, which could keep things interesting in the long run. Outside of that, Reddit user Chop75M has also pointed out that the 11th Hunter's silhouette was teased in the latest preview trailer, though we can't really tell much from this so far. It's a bit weird because the other ones are usually the face and a bit of the upper body, and this looks like it's arms and shoulder pads, or maybe it's just a very different looking face from what I'm expecting, but I'm sure we'll find out more about that in the future. And that is it for today. If you want to stay updated for future Crucible content, feel free to click the sub button and maybe the bell so that you'll get notified of that. And other than that, I hope to see you for the next one soon. DukeSloth out.